Welcome to The Self-Made Theory, the podcast that's all about innovating, overcoming, and prospering. We interview founders, entrepreneurs, innovators, CEOs, and other exciting people about their amazing business journey. Over to your host, Ben Campbell, for this week's episode.
Hey, it's Ben here. You know how sometimes you just meet someone whose story is so fascinating that you just have to hear more? Well, this week on The Self-Made Theory, that person is Mark Roe. Mark has reinvented himself as an entrepreneur multiple times. Originally, he started out in the printing industry and he sold that business and semi-retired to an island in Fiji. Well, isn't that everybody's dream? Only to discover that reliable deliveries to the island he was on was non-existent. So, like all good entrepreneurs would, he started a ferry shipping service, which became the biggest in Fiji. Fast forward, and he's now back in Australia, and he's now making realistic body parts so that surgeons can learn their skills without practicing on real bodies. And Mark didn't know anything about healthcare before he started. This episode is just plain fascinating. You'll learn a lot about how the entrepreneurial mindset works. My name is Ben Campbell, and this is The Self-Made Theory. Mark, welcome to The Self-Made Theory.
Thank you very much, Ben. It's my pleasure being here.
Let's start with your elevator pitch on who is Fusetec.
Oh my God, you got me under pressure now. Well, Fusetec is an advanced manufacturing company servicing the medical device sector or the healthcare sector. We manufacture human anatomy to upskill surgeons. We're addressing the problem of how do surgeons train.
So you make body parts?
Yeah, effectively we make human body parts.
And they're pretty realistic from what I hear.
Yeah, well, they have to be realistic, mate, to capture the interest of the market.
So I want to come back to that because what's really interesting is how realistic they actually are and the amazing value that they provide to surgeons. So we're going to come back to that. But I'm interested in your background because you don't have a background in medical technology.
No, that's certainly true.
So if you cast your mind way back, your career started where?
Well, career started doing an apprenticeship back in the mid-'80s, a 4-year apprenticeship and 4 years of night school doing graphic art and design. You know, I ended up loving both of those trade, but decided I wasn't a very good artist, so I stuck with the printing at the time. That's when manufacturing was in vogue.
Yeah.
And I commenced my first company when I was 27.
So that's your own startup, was it?
Yeah, that was my first startup when I was 27. That was back in 1991, so that's showing my age now. And that was a great success, but, you know, very hard work, a lot of long hours at the first 7 years. I think I had Christmas Day off every year. That was it. So
really? Wow.
It was successful. And, you know, of course, when you're going through rapid growth, you have cash flow problems. And it took 7 years to find a balance where we plateaued out and the company got into control and we got, you know, better systems and procedures. So I look at my first business as my apprenticeship in business management.
Your second apprenticeship. So one you had apprenticeship as in the graphic design piece and then apprenticeship in how to start a business.
Yeah. Apprenticeship as a tradesman and apprenticeship as a businessman. So basically I went through the school of hard knocks.
Yeah. And what did you learn through that 7 years of starting your first business?
I think the first lesson I learned that just because you're a good tradesman doesn't make you a good businessman.
100%.
And
that's irrespective of whether you're a good salesperson, doesn't mean you're a good sales manager.
Yeah.
Just because you're a good technologist doesn't make you a CEO of a technology company.
Yeah, exactly right. I remember after several years of being in business, you know, the business was just growing too quickly. And I went and seen my bank manager at the time and said, mate, you know, this business is outgrowing me. You know, I don't know if I can lead it going forward. I need help here. And he came back to me 2-3 days later and said, Mark, I've booked this into a business management course. Let's do it together. Wow. So, you know, they were the days you had bank managers and that was fantastic.
Yeah.
I probably never looked back from that point, actually. It was a fairly pivotal moment in my career, I think.
And so what would you do differently if you had that time again? Would you study business earlier on in your cycle? Would you
get some mentors like your bank manager on board sooner?
Yeah, look, that's an interesting question. I actually wanted to go through the university system, and the wisdom was my father at the time said to me, Mark, they're running out of jobs. You've got to go get one quickly. So I still laugh to this day. So, just because you're finished with your schooling doesn't mean to say you have to finish with your learning and your
100%.
education.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm quite self-disciplined that way. For the last couple of decades, I would buy a business management book every month, an autobiography of some description, and read it. And I love it. I just absorb that information. And they say in life, you're a total sum of your life's experience. So, all those lessons from the School of Hard Knocks and all those readings, if you retain that knowledge, you can become a better manager or a better leader. So, all good experiences.
One of my greatest sayings, one that I refer to a lot, in fact, it's even on my website, it's from Harry Truman, who said that not all readers are leaders,
Yep.
but all leaders are readers.
Oh, that is a wonderful saying, isn't it? And I agree with that wholeheartedly. Yeah.
And so after the 7 years, you sold the business?
Oh, not immediately. I sold it after 11 years. It was about 11 and a half, mid-2003.
Mm-hmm.
I sold it for a number of reasons. Manufacturing was going out of vogue. We had some health issues in the family.
Yeah.
And I thought, I really don't want to be stuck doing this for the rest of my life. I really need to reinvent myself. So I decided to take a year off of work and have a look and, just relax a little bit. I was fortunate enough to be in a financial position where I could do that.
Yeah.
So I took a year out and ended up on a remote island in the South Pacific. And I thought, right, I'll tick something off my things to do list, and I decided to build my own house.
So hang on. So this is not a holiday. This is I'm going to Robinson Crusoe myself out on an island somewhere.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
Pretty much. I loved it, mate. It was a fantastic time in my life. And I was quite passionate about woodwork. So I thought, right, I'll just build a big log cabin, and took a year out.
And so did you buy a block of land there or?
Yeah, I bought a few acres of beachfront property. Truly it was gorgeous. And bought 2 books on how to build a house. And
because I imagine there wasn't a lot of internet on this remote island.
No, there was pretty much nothing. You didn't even have a delicatessen as such. So it was quite challenging. I remember when I first got there, I went and asked one of the locals, where do we buy meat? And they said, well, we get it from the funerals. And I was just dumbfounded. I didn't really know what that meant at the time. So, it was a whole cultural experience for me.
So what did that mean?
What did they mean? Well, sorry, I probably should have explained that better. So part of the culture in Fiji is, it was in Fiji, the island. On the outer islands, what happens if somebody passes away, they have a week-long ceremony and feast, and everybody on the island will pitch in and work and get the big ceremony happening. And the harder you work, then they actually will sacrifice a few sheep and cows, and they'll cut you off a leg of lamb, and you take that home. So that's your rations for, a week's
your contribution.
For your contribution, yeah.
Okay.
So it was a great cultural experience, and I absolutely treasure it. And I spent several years there in the end. I decided originally I was just going to allocate 1 year, and I was there for the best part of 10 years.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Wow. Talk to me about deliveries onto the island and seeing a problem that you decided you needed to do something about.
Yeah, well, when I decided to build the house, then we had to get the raw materials, the wood, the bricks, etc. And there was a local ferry that used to come to the island. It was supposed to, turn up once a week, and of course it would go for 3-month periods, and you wouldn't see the ferry. So I thought, okay, I need to start a little ferry business here and buy my own ferry. So I did that, and it was a great success. I ended up owning the biggest shipping company in Fiji. So I think I had 11 regional offices, 3 ships, probably a fleet of 20 or 30 trucks in the end, and a couple of hundred staff. And, it really was going gangbusters over there, and I thoroughly enjoyed it.
So what was happening in the industry at that particular point in time? Were the ferry operators just individuals doing their thing?
Yeah, they were individual companies. There was quite a few of them around on the route that we serviced, which was Suva, Savasavi, Tribuni. There were 2 main ships on that route, but and I spoke to the owners of those companies before I started my business, and they had the philosophy where, we don't do maintenance on our ships. We only fix them when they break down. And of course, they were always broken down. So I thought, there's just got to be a better way to run a shipping service in Fiji. And like every business, I did my research. I spoke to a lot of people, including the general public, that people would have a farm and they said, we don't grow crops because we can't get our crop to the market. Because, if you harvest a corn.
It can't sit there for 2 months.
Yeah, it can't sit there for 2 months waiting for a ship. It rots. So I thought, there's a real need here for a reliable shipping service. And if we build a reliable service, then, the farmers will start growing crops, the fishermen will start fishing. And what happened was we built that reliable shipping service. And, if my ships were 15 minutes late, I wanted to know why. And we were really professional, and I was very proud of the work we were doing over there. But what happened, everything started booming. Tourism boomed, and hotels were popping up, and we were in great favour with the government because a couple of our policies were along the lines of any sick people will transport for free from the outer islands to the mainland.
Okay. So how did that policy come about? I mean, what a fantastic...
Well, it was just a good social service to do. Your ships were going anyway. It doesn't matter if we put a patient on there. The terms and conditions over, they always had to travel with a nurse or a doctor.
Yeah.
And we'd give them a free cabin. All educational material we transported for free. So, we got in, we were held in high regards with the local government to the point where, they wanted to expand rapidly and service the whole 320 islands of Fiji. And they even offered to financially support us as a company. Effectively, we were rapidly becoming the Qantas of Fiji.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it was a great fun business. I really loved it over there.
So you're not in Fiji now. You're back in Australia. How did that come about?
Wow. We faced a lot of adversity over there. When I first started there, I was in the newspapers every day named the Great White Shark. We were coming over to steal all their work.
Yeah.
And in the early years, there was a lot of corruption, and we had all sorts of technical problems. The maritime industry was very embryonic, didn't have a lot of rules and laws and regulations. So we had a lot of adversity, and we overcome all of them. They were just hurdles. And I look back in my 11 years apprenticeship as a business manager, served me greatly over there. And, I was a self-confident man that felt like I could take on any challenge. But there was one hurdle that cropped up, and it was just a little bit too big an obstacle for me. So I had to pack up my bags and come home. And that was when my wife decided to leave me. So it was personal in nature, but it's probably the first thing in my life that actually beat me, that it really had a great emotional impact on me. And it came as a shock to me, and it did beat me. So, no shame in admitting I was a beaten man for a couple of years. So I had to disassemble the company. I scrapped it, sold it off in bits, so the ships are all still running.
So why not sell it off as a going concern?
Just too much money.
Yeah.
It was a big company, so...
Yeah. And finding someone with that amount of money to buy it.
Yeah. So at the time, the board had already approved that we were going to list on the Fijian Stock Exchange, and we were halfway through that process. We were raising capital to expand into Tonga and Samoa and Papua New Guinea. We'd been over there and met the ministers, and they all wanted ferry services. So, the company was growing through rapid growth, and, it started to get a fairly high net worth value, not high by Australian standards, but high by Fiji standards. So it was easier to sell it off in bits and pieces than it was as a whole.
And that then enabled you to come back to Australia?
Well, it did. It was follow the wife and the children back to Australia, yeah. So that was my purpose for coming back here. But, Adelaide's my home. I love it here, always have. I also love my island in Fiji. It was just, I look back at it as 10 years of semi-retirement. It was just wonderful. And I was in a fortunate position where, even though we had a fairly significant company over there, I only actually worked 1 week a month. Oh. So I spent 3 weeks on my island. 1 week every month I'd go into the capital city. The first 2 days I'd always talk to the managers, go on the ships, talk to the captains and the engineers, assess if there's any problems or any need, talk to the customers. On the Wednesday, we'd always have the board meeting. On the Thursday and Friday, I would action any minutes from the board meeting. And see you next month, boys, and...
Wow.
But,
isn't that everybody's dream? Isn't that... Yeah. I imagine most CEOs at some point would love for to be in that position.
Yeah, I think, every business is different and different stages within your business. The business I have now is very much a hands-on role at the moment till I get it established. The shipping company in Fiji, the very first day, I just employed 26 people. Bang, done. I went and bought a ship. It wasn't quite that easy. I spent months planning it, writing policies and systems and all that type of stuff, and financing it all and finding investors. And so there was a lot of hard work done, and, it was a full-time gig for probably 6 months. Then when we started the company, I worked full-time for probably 3 or 4 months. You can say the best part of a year I put into it. But from that point there, it was under self-management effectively. So I had 5 line managers. So I had the head of finance, the head of sales, the head of logistics, etc. And they all answered to me personally. But basically, I gave them autonomy to do their job. They all had their job descriptions. They had their budgets. If there's any problem, they just gave me a phone call. So I say I was at home on my island for 3 weeks of the month, and I was, but I'd always get 2 or 3 phone calls a day.
Yeah.
But it's not bad.
Absolutely.
I'll take that. Yeah.
So you disbanded the company, sold it off.
Yep.
Come back to Australia.
Yep.
Was there a plan?
Look, I wasn't planning on coming back to Australia. I decided, right, I've got to take stock of my life again and reinvent myself. So I did, and basically commenced Fusetec.
Where did the idea for Fusetec come from?
When I was the CEO of that company, I was introduced to additive manufacturing, and
So what's additive manufacturing?
Basically 3D printing. The whole idea is, you get materials, whether it's metal or plastic, and, you build them on top of each other layer by layer, rather than subtractive manufacturing where you start off with a big piece of steel
like
and
a
you turn it
CNC
down.
machine or whatever.
CNC machine, yeah, exactly. So I like this idea of additive manufacturing and 4.0 methodology. And I thought, right, this is something I can probably do. It's called 3D printing, but it's really got nothing to do with printing whatsoever. But I thought, well, I'd run printing companies before, and when I was in Fiji, I actually had an engineering company as well and a renewable energy company. So I quite liked engineering. So I thought, okay, this is probably something I can do. So I went at that stage, when I left the job, I packed up my bags and went over to America and studied in America for probably best part of 2 months, traveling around. Ended up at...
and doing what? Just looking at additive manufacturing facilities or?
Yep, exactly.
Oh, okay.
Yep, going from university, additive manufacturing facilities. So after a few months traveling around the USA, I ended up in Minnesota, and it's kind of the epicenter of 3D printing there, a big sales office selling technology.
Right.
And I liked what I seen. I liked the technology, but, decided I'd bring it back to Australia. This technology was not available in Australia at the time, so we bought the first machine.
Yeah. What were you going to do with it? Did you have a plan?
Well, I didn't buy that machine straight off the bat. I decided I wanted to, but I didn't have a plan at all. And that was the problem right there and then. I looked at several business models and I just couldn't financially make sense of any of it. It just wasn't worth buying this technology. And, we looked at not just business models, but different business sectors. We looked at servicing the defence sector, looked at servicing the aerospace sector, looked at servicing the medical sector. I decided against the first two as our core business model, mainly because no matter what we did, they were always going to become a bureau service, and itself isn't a good business model.
So what do you mean by explain to people
a
who
bureau
don't understand
service
that?
Basically means if you buy some technology and you service a defence sector, other people end up owning the IP and they outsource work to you and you manufacture it for them.
So they do the design, right? They come up with that and they say, can you effectively 3D print this for us?
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you, Mark.
So I looked at that, and the trouble is, buying, I call it generic technology off the shelf, you're always going to have a competitor down the track. So I decided no matter what we do, we have to develop our own IP as a business model going forward. And then I was looking at the healthcare sector, and I decided, this is probably more of a global opportunity for us, the healthcare sector.
Mm-hmm.
If we're doing defence, it's probably more SA-based.
Yep.
So I thought, right, I'll focus my attention on the healthcare sector. Now I have to find a problem to solve. It sounds crazy, doesn't it? I know.
It usually works the other way around, but I love the fact that you found the problem.
I know. And, I see problems every day, and I see new business opportunities every day of the week.
All great entrepreneurs do, mate.
Right. Well, that's interesting.
100%.
I didn't know that, so I learned something today. Thank you for that. Anyway, but on this occasion, I was actually in search of a problem. And I spent a year going to conferences, talking to medical professionals and academics and asking them what their needs were in the medical sector. And one surgeon mentioned to me one day what he'd really like is a patient-specific model. And I asked him to explain that to me, and he said, you know, Mark, when somebody comes in and they've got, say, a heart problem, we'll do an MRI, and we'd like to be able to give you that MRI, and we want you to manufacture that person's specific heart. So they may have a blocked aorta, or they may have a pericardial infusion. They have some pathology of the heart. And if you could manufacture that and we could hold it in our hand and we could evaluate the pathology or the medical problem, then we could pre-plan the surgery better. And potentially, even if we could dissect it, that would be great. So effectively, we could rehearse before we actually do the living patient surgery. I thought, wow, okay, now that's something we could do, but what a terrible business model. Once again, we're always making one-off products, and really, from a financial point of view, you'll manufacture the product, and of course, every product you have to put a lot of time and energy and effort into that nobody will want to pay for.
And the question is, who's going to pay, right?
Yeah,
is the doctor going to pay? Is the healthcare fund going to pay? Is the patient going to pay?
Yep. I really like the fact that we could save a patient's life potentially, but I'll only be able to save one, and then I'll be out of business. So I needed to find a better business model. But taking those words of...
But I imagine the problem still existed, because if you're a surgeon,
yes,
you can theoretically understand all of the different problems with somebody's heart.
Yes.
But until you actually operate on one of them, you'll never get that experience.
You're exactly right. And of course, the longer I'm in this sector, the more I learn about it. And, you know, a lot of the surgeons, they look at CTs and MRIs, and they're basically getting a 2D field of vision, and they have to, you know, picture that in 3D somehow. And of course, the next problem they have is when they always do an operation, they open a patient up and there's, you know, something there that wasn't presenting itself obviously on the CT scan. So the request from the surgeon to make a patient-specific model actually was an embryo in my mind as well. And I thought, you know, why did surgeons have to train? You know, is there a problem to solve there with surgical training? So I did look into that, and I decided, right, there is a gap here, and we can fulfill that gap. But it's not just something necessarily going wrong with surgical training. Is the human anatomy is so complicated and complex, and every single patient can present something slightly different. And you don't have the opportunity during your days at university or your residency at the hospital to actually perform a dissection or to rehearse on some of these complications. So we thought, right, this is an opportunity here where we can assist by making medical devices for surgeons to train on that are outside of the normal. You know, let's make...
So hang on. So if I'm a surgeon in training at university, assume I am doing some dissections and operations, but I'm doing it on a cadaver, aren't I?
Yeah, well, you pretty much are. Even doing it on a cadaver is a bit of a luxury these days. You know, firstly, it's a blessing that people donate their body to medical science. I want to put that out there straight away, and hopefully there's more of it, because you know our young medical professionals do need to train, and even the experienced ones need to continually rehearse. So you know, donating your body to medical science is an absolute blessing and a godsend. So thank you for that. So students in a university will do dissections, but there are problems associated with that. It's, you know, the regulatory burdens, the potential of bacteria and viruses that live in cadavers. Once people are embalmed, you have volatile gases. So there's occupational health and safety risks with cadavers. The next problem you find as well is if, you know, you want to practice removing a tumour posterior to the sphenoid bone. What is that? And you can't.
And if you can't find a person who's had that,
yeah, exactly. You can't order a cadaver with a particular pathology or disease. Literally, you get what you're given. So, you know, if you want to practice doing sinus surgery or surgery on the nose, you might get a patient that has a perfectly normal nose, where you really want to have a complex anatomy so you can upskill.
Yeah.
So, hence, there's a fair gap there. So, the young students or the residents at the hospitals, they can only train on what's been presented to them. Of course, there's a lot of software around as well, which is great, but it really doesn't give you that haptic feedback, or that's the name given when you want to learn the resistance on a tool. For example, when you're cutting through human flesh, how hard do you push and all those type of things. So the software is really not giving you that, and it also is pretty limited in the emotional experience. You can imagine how traumatic it is actually when you're learning that you're dissecting human bodies. So you have to go through that emotional learning curve as well. And, it's a lot to absorb and a lot to learn when you're a young medical professional. And we did see a gap in the surgical training. So we decided that, okay, what we want to do is manufacture products with complex anatomies and pathologies for surgeons to train on. So not just surgeons, we have medical students can train on them, residents can train on them, and surgeons can upskill or learn advanced surgical training on them. There's many levels and degrees of difficulty in surgery itself.
Are you a busy executive with not enough time to work on your business and fit in physical exercise into your day? As a business coach and mentor, many of the executives I work with understand that their most precious resource is time. On top of running their business and the demands of life in general, the challenge for many is fitting exercise into their busy lives. Harvard Business Review indicates your mental firepower as an executive is directly linked to your physical regimen. Exercise brings improved concentration, sharper memory, faster learning, prolonged mental stamina, enhanced creativity and lower stress. And that doesn't include all the physical health benefits as well. In response to this, we've launched Self-Made Cycling, our business and executive coaching services, conducted not in the boardroom but on the bike. It's a brilliant way to combine all the benefits of working on your business challenges while bringing you the physiological benefits of exercise. Years ago, a lot of business was conducted on the golf course. Today, it's time to handle your business on the handlebars. We cater for all levels of executives and cycling experience. Beginner, pro, entrepreneur, manager, CEO, weekly, fortnightly or monthly. We've got you covered. We've launched this service in January at the Tour Down Under in Adelaide, but can work with executives anywhere in the world using your smart trainer and platforms like Zwift. And don't forget to chat to your accountant. Did I hear someone say tax deduction? Visit our website, selfmadecycling.com.au, or call 1300 Theory. Business and cycling, it doesn't get any better.
So when we're talking products, you're talking about replica body parts and anatomy.
Yep, that is correct. We decided that this really is a business that has global implications in a very big sector. In the healthcare sector in the US alone is 18% of GDP before COVID. I couldn't even imagine what it is now. It is huge. I mean, I think the defence sector is only 3 or 4%. So, it's basically 5 times the size of the defence sector.
And the spending isn't going down. It's going the opposite way.
Exactly. So, it has significant global implications. And
so you decided there was this gap.
Yep.
Right. What did you do next?
Well, I found the problem that we wanted to solve. I knew it was a big problem and I knew it was beyond my capability. I have a belief system that says, I know I haven't got the ability to design a rocket ship to fly to the moon, but I can oversee a team of engineers that can. So I kind of had a belief in my own leadership ability. So I knew what I needed to do next was get a team around me, a team of people with the right attitude and with expertise. So I went around to the universities and I presented my idea to them, and they basically said to me, Mark, it's too hard, forget it, go home.
And so what sort of person are you to respond when you hear that, Mark, it's too hard?
I actually came back and went, great. I thought the barriers to entry are too high. This is going to take my potential competitors out of the market. They won't even get started. So I thought, this is wonderful. Now I have to find some people that are going to believe in my vision. And literally, instead of having a collaboration with the university, I'm going to have to employ some people and develop this myself. So I did that. We employed a few people, very smart people with degrees and PhDs and things like that. And I set forth the task. This is what we want to do. Let's get cracking. So we went and bought that technology.
The stuff from Minnesota that you've seen?
Yep. Bought the technology out of USA as our starting point. And that was a great starting point, by the way. And then we had to knuckle down and start, developing our own software, developing materials, segmenting human anatomy, try to get this technology up to a higher level. And I kind of look at that as Steve Jobs might not have invented the phone, but he certainly added value to it. So I started off with base technology and added a lot of value to it. And after about 6 months, we got our first rudimentary prototype. I took it around to one of the university wet labs, and they said, this is quite good, Mark.
And what part of the body was that?
That was a human head at the time. That was the first head that we'd made. Mm-hmm. And I took it around to the wet lab, and they said, it's a good start, Mark. Do you mind if we show a surgeon? And I said, yeah, that's fine. And they said, leave it with me. And I didn't even get back to work, and my phone rang and turn around and go back to the university. And one surgeon seen it and said, Mark, this is pretty good. Are you interested in a commission? And I said, yeah, I'd love one. So we got a commission to...
So explain a commission.
One of the surgeons, there's also a professor. His name's Peter John Wormel, the chairman of ENT, which is ear, nose and throat. He commissioned us or paid us to develop some sinus training products.
Okay.
And the reason he did that is because he just travels the world constantly doing ENT training, and he has constant problems with cadavers. And for people that aren't in the healthcare sector, you don't appreciate the amount of problems that you have. For example, in the Middle East, they import all their cadavers. They don't dissect their own bodies. And probably 50% of surgical training courses are cancelled because the bodies just don't roll up. So the surgeons will pay for their, a few $1,000s, and they'll fly in, and all the equipment's all been flown in, and then there's no cadavers, so everybody goes home. So, there's just problems all around the world with surgical training. The limited ability to access wet labs and the limit of pathology itself. A lot of medical device companies, they want to demonstrate their products or teach surgeons how to use their products, and it may be like a stent that they want to insert, and by FDA law, they actually have to teach them how to do it on a cadaver. And of course, the cadavers have all sorts of problems that are unexpected, so the salespeople have trouble demonstrating their product. So they're looking for an easier solution. So we can now manufacture parts for medical companies, say, for an example, a heart, and they can show a surgeon how to put a stent into that heart, and it's just a manufactured product rather than a real one, but it works effectively the same. So anyway, getting back to the story, Professor Wormel commissioned us to manufacture these sinus training products because he's having problems teaching around the world. And when I say teaching, every person has a different anatomy. Some are easy, some are complex. So if he has 20 people in a class, he never knows what he's going to get. So by manufacturing our products, we can control the learning curve. We can have an easy product, let's say a level 1, a level 2, a level 3, right up to, say, level 20 with 20 different anatomies. And we can take the students or take the residents or take the surgeons through that whole learning curve. For example, medical students might be taught on levels 1 to 6, residents on 6 to 12, advanced surgeons on 12 to 20.
Yeah.
Where you're now removing tumours that are wrapped around a carotid artery or something like that.
Yeah.
So it's all about continual rehearsal and being able to control the learning curve and to practice on things before you have to do the dissection in real life on a human.
So Professor Wormel sent you off on a, create this for me mission.
Yep.
And what did you create?
The Professor Wormel supplied us with a CT scan of the human sinus and de-identified it for ethical reasons. And we then done the segmentation on it and tried to manufacture it. And we were very proud of our efforts. And it took about 3 months to do the first one. And I presented it to Professor Wormel, and he replied to me, Mark, if you're not going to get serious, you might as well forget about it. So it was a little bit devastating at the time, but I thought, right, okay, now I need to double down. So we need to, really learn a little bit more about this anatomy and how it works and what they're looking for. And
so how did you miss the mark?
Do you know, well, it was a couple of reasons. We had a little bit of bad luck where the agreement with Professor Wormel was he was going to inspect our progress daily, for the first 3 months. And of course, he actually had an injury and ended up in surgery himself. So for 3 months, he didn't get to see our product. And so he didn't get to oversee our daily progression. If that hadn't happened, we would have been a bit more advanced. But anyway, after Professor Wormel had recovered and we presented the product to him, he started giving us advice. So when you look at a CT scan, there really is a skill to be able to read a CT scan. It's very hard to determine, what's bone, what's muscle, what's fat, what's skin. There's a real art to it. And, we've done the segmentation to the best that we could, but not understanding the anatomy and the nuances of anatomy. And so,
you're working purely off of a CT scan. You're not working off, here's someone's real life sinus.
Well, it is actually somebody's real life CT scan.
But you don't have the physical sinus in front of you. So you're working purely off of a 2D image to be able to create and replicate something in 3D.
Yeah, black and white 2D images. Okay. It literally looks like an X-ray, and we'll get, say, 1,000 of them.
Yeah.
And what we have to do is we have to join the dots and join all 1,000 together to make a product. And then you have to get it anatomically accurate. And
that sounds incredibly complex, and no wonder he said, "If you're not serious, come back."
Yeah, exactly.
So you go away. You were told your product's not very good.
Yeah.
Your first effort. What did you do next?
We had just had to knuckle down and refine it. Develop more materials and get the segmentation improvements and get more people on the team.
Yeah.
Employed a medical doctor at that stage to help us do the CTs and MRIs. And it took a further 9 months before we finally got our first endorsement. Now, during that 9-month period, we were in surgery, and we still do it to this day. We go into surgery every single Tuesday afternoon. So we present more products, the surgeons do a dissection on them, and then they give us the feedback, and then we go back and make the adjustments. See you next week, see you next week, see you next week. And this went on for a further 9 months. And, right down to the point where the surgeons, Professor Worm was saying, make this 500th of a millimetre thicker, make this 2% softer or 2% harder.
What?
It was insane.
Those tolerances are unbelievable.
Yeah. To get his endorsement, that's what we had to do.
So, a surgeon looking at your product today, how real is it?
I have a bias on that answer, but, we've showed several surgeons and we show them the video of an actual dissection in real life.
Yeah.
For example...
and I've seen that video.
Yeah.
I think you showed it to me when we met a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind putting that on our website too for people to have a look at.
Right. Well, we've showed them, the dissection in real life, and the surgeons themselves think it's actually a cadaver. They don't know that it's actually not.
Can't notice.
They don't know it's not a living person specimen. So
that's amazing.
So they're pretty happy with the end result. So, from that point, that stage, then once we got the endorsement, it's right, now let's roll it out. And Professor Wormel said, we can't have one sinus product in a training course. We need a series of 6. So all of a sudden now we had to develop 5 more.
And are these variations or these completely different parts of the sinus system that you...
They're really all variations. So the first 6 were 6 different patients, all with different pathologies.
Right.
So, one may have had what they call a conchoballosa. Another one has a deviated septum. One has an agonase cell and a superagonase cell. Another one doesn't. So they all have slightly different anatomies. It's amazing how different human anatomy is. So they were different, what we call surgical levels, 1 through to 6. And we rank them in order of when they start training on number 1 and they get advanced.
Yeah. So you go and create a whole bunch of new products for them?
Yeah. So we finally got the endorsement for all 6. Then they were sent to America.
And I imagine the process for developing the other 5 wasn't nearly as lengthy as the first one, which took about, a year roughly?
Yeah, the first one took about a year. And we've got it down now to it takes about a month of product to develop.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
We don't have to rewrite software or develop materials. So about a month of product. That's for the sinus product. Of course, we've got other products now, orthopedics, neuro, cardio, working on gyno as we speak. So we've got a whole range of products now. But just looking backwards, after we developed the first 6, we launched our product, and it was launched in McGill University in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
And
so why Canada? I mean, other than Canadians are cool, like Australians.
Yeah. Well, it's we were taking the product to the market to sell it. We started marketing it. And what happened was it was a McGill University were umming and arguing over whether to use our product or not, or take the risk. And there's always a fear of the unknown. So they actually decided against our product.
Yeah.
And they were going to go with cadavers. And, about a week before the conference, they contacted me and said, Mark, we can't get the cadavers. Any chance you can get your products in a hurry? So.
Wow.
Yeah.
Which is exactly the same problem you'd seen before and you'd heard about before.
Yeah. Yes, exactly what happened. So they had no option but to take a leap of faith in our product. So we got a bit of luck there, reality. And so what we did was we were lucky we already had some in stock and we just packed them up and got them there. They literally got there, I think, the morning of the conference.
Wow.
And Professor Wormel actually flew over there to do the surgical training on the very first one in Canada.
Right.
And just got rave reviews on the internet in the medical sector. And then it just started rolling out. The week later, we were in New Orleans. A week after that, I think we're in Dubai. Then we're in Saudi Arabia. Then we're in Greece, and we just zigzagging. I was zigzagging around the world everywhere. I spent just prior to COVID, because we only launched in November 2019. It's just not that long ago. I think in 3 months, I literally probably spent 3 or 4 days back in Adelaide. Every day was in a different city somewhere. It was crazy and exhausting too, I might add. I was significantly jet lagged by the end of it. And I was almost grateful to come home. But, it came to a grinding halt when COVID hit. We're certainly in vogue and people were using it for surgical training. But all of a sudden when COVID hit, who's doing training? It's kind of like the military, really, where everybody trains. But when the war's on, mate, you go to the front line. So
there's no training, right?
No, there's no training. Everybody was in the front line then, fighting COVID. So training ground to a halt. And that, in actual fact, it's a blessing in disguise for us. I mean, it's a horrible thing for the world, and I wouldn't wish it upon the world. But it gave me time to, sit down, recoup, reevaluate, re-strategize. What are we actually going to do here? Our product is a success now. Let's develop more products. Let's get some investors on the board. Let's scale and let's get a better strategy for rolling this out. I can't be flying around the world all the time.
Nope.
From that point of view, it was a blessing. And but what we also did was because we started with sinus products, we what's the word for it? Repurposed our products to be a COVID trainer. So we extended the sinus product and put what they call the nasal pharynx on it,
right.
Which if you've seen the videos where they do the swab training, they just put that swab so far in.
Yeah.
And it goes all the way to the back of your nose, basically to the top of your throat. And it's called the nasal pharynx.
Yeah.
So we extended
I think everybody listening's probably got that strange feeling going on right now.
Yeah, I'm blessed. I haven't had a COVID swab yet, and I'm counting my blessings. I'm not looking forward to it. So anyway, we extended our nasal trainer to the nasal pharynx, and we've been selling them around the world.
Okay.
And we're sort of been promoting it now that, you can use it for nasal swabs, as many as you want, train as many people as you want. And then, put it in your cupboard when you do your next, surgical training course, get it out and use it for that as well.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's become a multi-purpose product now. So, we sold some into Nova Scotia last week, and we've got another order today. So people are still getting trained how to swab for COVID. So that has been a bit of a blessing for us, where we could reinvent our product or find another value, another use for it. But because of our initial market acceptance, and now we're finding that a lot of the big medical device companies of the world, these are multinational companies. I mean, they're the size of BHP. They're huge. Yeah. We're starting to get now commissions from them. So we've got several products being developed right now for post-COVID, which include, multiple disciplines, orthopedics and neuro and stuff like that.
And that's because it ties into the training element of the tools that they're creating themselves to sell to customers. Is that how it fits?
Yeah, from the big medical device companies, they like to sell their products, whether it be endoscopes or whatever, a knee transplant. What happens is surgeons have to be trained how to use those products, trained how to put a hip transplant in or a knee transplant in, and they're always bringing out new variations of it, so they have to retrain and retrain and retrain. So it's much easier from their perspective to have 6 of our legs in the boot of their car, because they can't have 6 real legs by law. So now how surgical training actually works is if you want to learn how to do a knee transplant, what they'll do is they'll probably get a surgeon from the RA, they'll put him in a taxi, take him to the airport, put them in an airplane, fly them to Sydney, put them in a wet lab. Some surgeon will train him, then he'll fly all the way back. The cost of that isn't the problem from these big medical device companies. What the problem is getting the surgeon out of surgery for 8 hours.
100%. And not just for one day.
Yeah.
Day there, the day back, the time that they're up there, the cost associated with that. That's a big impact.
So, how our device helps solve that problem is now they can just put a leg in the boot of their car and drive it around and put it on the surgeon's desk. It takes half an hour now rather than 8 hours of his day. Yeah. And they're more likely to accept that training at that point. But that's just from a medical device company point of view. From a surgeon's point of view, they have to continually train and they want to upskill. They're all about saving lives. And there's a lot of surgical procedures that are quite rare and quite complicated and high-risk surgical procedures. Now, what can they practice on? There really is nothing in the world. For example, if you have if you have an aneurysm and you need an aneurysm clip, there's nothing in the world that they can train on, but we can now actually make a brain with blood flowing around the circle of Willis, and surgeons can practice on that, putting aneurysm clips on. So they can practice their skills, they can rehearse, all without risk. There's no risk of bacteria, there's no risk to a patient, so that they can just keep advancing and improving their skills. So when they actually do it in real life, there's less risk to the patient. So the whole idea is that de-risk the system. So that's what we're looking at doing.
It's amazing that this problem has existed for a long time and no one solved it yet until you came along.
Well, firstly, thank you. I think the problem has existed for a long time, and it's been acknowledged for a long time in the healthcare sector. And but they just haven't had the technology to solve this problem until now. And really, like a lot of technology and businesses, it's an accumulation of a wealth of knowledge. We started with printing, then we evolved to this, then we evolved to that, and material science has been developing, and IT's been developing, and all of these. What we've literally done is just pulled all these best technologies together. Like, we bought the world's best materials and the world's best software and the world's best 3D printer, and we pulled it all together, and then we started adding value to that and developing this range of products. And it hasn't been easy. It's 3 years without pay. 3 years I'm paying wages.
Are you paying yourself yet?
I am, and it only started recently, I might add. So it was a very difficult first 3 years, and that valley of the death was, quite brutal. And like every good R&D project, I massively underestimated the cost of it and the time. And I allowed 1 year and X amount of dollars, and of course it was 3 years and 3X.
Yep.
So it was quite significant. And we had to do a capital raise about a year ago. And I have to thank my shareholders very much for that. It wasn't for that, we, probably would have folded. And because that was before product to market. So, we had to take a leap of faith in what we were undertaking and that we would reach the desired outcomes, but it didn't guarantee it. You put everything on the line, and if you don't take a risk, you probably don't get the rewards as such, but it was high risk, If it failed, that's it. I'm on the dole for the rest of my life as such. So it's pretty scary.
But along the way, you must have taken solace in that there were all these people telling you that there was this problem out there that needed to be solved. And was it really an execution risk rather than a business model or a lack of opportunity risk?
I could always see the opportunity there, and I always believed in the business model. It was more a risk of, can we actually develop the technology?
The execution risk.
Execution. Yeah. So whether we could develop to a realistic enough product that it would be accepted by the market. And, there really was a pretty big risk there. I mean, when you got the university saying to you, it can't be done, they're smarter than I am, let's face it. So, I back myself, but sometimes naively, and just get a bit of dumb luck, I think. So, yeah. But we managed to pull it off, and we still have our challenges ahead of us. We're what I call an IP-centric company that's in perpetual R&D mode. I mean, our R&D will just never stop. But now that we're getting some runs on the board and we're getting accepted by the healthcare sector, we've also now got several collaborations with different universities where we're, improving all of our science with the professors are all getting on board now. So sort of I've been blessed with that. I've actually got a grant or two now to help develop it. So life's getting a little bit easier. And
I imagine you're not taking your foot off the pedal, though.
No. Look, we've really only just started. I've still got a solid 5 years of hard work ahead of me. And, I remember back in July 2018, we'd been going for a year and a half, and I was almost ready to pull the pin on the business. I just couldn't get buy-in really from anybody. And I remember the Department of Trade ran a health life science mission in China. And I thought, right, this is the last pitch effort. I'm going to go over there with Minister, at the time, Minister of Trade, Minister Ridgway. Went over there and I was up on stage pitching 5 cities in 5 days, and I was overwhelmed by the response. I was standing up on stage and I was getting hit in the head with people flinging business cards at me. It was just, I went from one extreme to the other. In Adelaide, I just couldn't get any buy-in, and over there I had thousands of people hit me in the head with business cards. It was quite amazing. Yeah. I came back from that trip and I went, wow, there really is a global market here. It's just probably not in Adelaide. Adelaide will absolutely pick up and run with this product, but it's a bit harder to sell here than overseas. And I find that, even in the USA, I've been over there and it's probably taken the best part of a year for them to accept change and to, say, okay, let's go with your product. China, they wanted to go with it that day. And we are getting buy-in now by the universities, buy-in by the hospitals, buy-in by the government. We're sort of getting a few runs on the board here. So, the plan is to, just keep developing at the moment and, keep funding R&D, keep designing new products and getting ready for post-COVID and then, try to start again and roll it out globally.
Well, congratulations on everything that you and your team have achieved so far.
Thank you very much.
I have no doubt there'll be lots of other things that you will achieve in the future as well.
Well, we certainly hope so. We've got quite a strategic plan laid out ahead of us. We've got some big ambitions. I think there's an old saying, what's the purpose of the stars if you don't strive for them, So, we've got a big market there that we're tackling, and, we've got to have big ambitions and to achieve it. And if, I've got certain milestones now laid out for the next 5 years that I'd like to accomplish during my tenancy. Then look forward to handing over to the next generation. We've got some great people on our team here. The next evolution of adults. They're better educated. They're 3 inches taller. They're faster. They're leaner. I'd be a fool to think that, I'm better than them. I'm just older with a few more runs on the board. But, you give them a few years out in industry and then the school of hard knocks and they'll take over this company and take it to the next level.
And we all bring different things to the team, don't we?
Yeah.
You bring a whole bunch of innovation and experience.
Yeah.
And they bring a bunch of new ideas, and that's why you've got such a great team. So well done.
Thank you very much, Ben. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Excellent. Thanks very much. Cheers.
Come on, you've got to agree with me that you wish you had Mark's boldness to take on new ideas you come up with. But it's not something you're born with. You can hone this skill just like any other. I have some really, really cool photos and videos on my website about Fusetec, including how you can connect with them on social media. Head to theselfmadetheory.com/podcast for more info. Until next time, keep innovating, overcoming and prospering.